I'm Eric Edmond, and I used to work for the Bank of England in the monetary policy area and also in the markets. Previous to that, I was a scientist. I did a science degree at Edinburgh, and my research degree in science was from Oxford University. And then I went into the civil service at a very interesting time in 1972-73, when actually Edward Heath was negotiating our entry into the common market. And I'd like to give you a little bit of historical perspective really on this, about why it happened and how it happened. You have to understand that the people who were at that stage running the UK had had their opinions formed in the Second World War. And one of the overriding objectives of all countries' policy was to avoid another European conflict situation. And so for that reason, the common market, as it then was seen as a very useful vehicle to achieve this. Now, as well as that, you have to realise that in the late 60s, the British industrial strife was rife. The performance of the UK economy was poor. It was miles worse than what was happening in France and Germany and the countries which were actually in the common market. And for this reason, it was seen as a way of actually hitching the UK economy into these faster growing economies, and therefore would give us considerable economic benefit. Now, this was all very well, but it has its roots in a lack of confidence that we have in this country that we cannot run our country properly, and therefore we have to go and get someone else to do it. And some of these very clever Europeans were the obvious people. And I've always found this very difficult to understand why we have this, and it continues to this day, in fact, in the monetary policy area. Nowadays, we hear of how good it would be for us to enter the euro. Well, why? If we give up control of our money, we actually give up our country. What we're saying is we can't run our country properly now, and it would be better if we left it up to these people who know best in Brussels or Strasbourg. But the truth is, of course, that they don't know best, and their interests are not our interests. What would have happened in the credit crunch if we had been in the euro? Well, it's not clear to me that the ECB would have been as keen to bail out British banks as the Bank of England was, because of course the ECB and Euroland generally, they are interested in getting the business out of the City of London and across to the continent. The City of London is an enormous wealth generating operation. It generates about 20% of the wealth in this country, and to be quite frank, the continental countries will like to get their hands on some of this business, and for that reason, had we not had our own central bank in the Bank of England, we would not have been in as good a position to get out of the credit crunch. Now, much also has been made of the pound sterling falling. Well, this in fact is the way markets work, and it enables economies to recover more quickly from economic downturns if they do have a floating exchange rate. And this has been shown time and time again. If you remember, there was a great disaster befell the British economy in 1992 when we had to leave the ERM, the exchange rate mechanism. And this was portrayed as being a black day for United Kingdom. In fact, it wasn't nothing of the sort. It had in it the seeds of our future economic recovery. And that happened as a result of having a floating exchange rate, being able to set our own interest rates, and therefore respond to the needs of the UK economy. The problem with being in the euro is that the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, sets interest rates to suit the whole of the Eurozone. And as the economic centre of the Eurozone is Germany, you end up with rates which actually suit the German economy, not the British economy, which is a different economy, not based on service industry and hasn't got the same amount of engineering in it. Now, this is absolutely crucial, because the fact that you're setting interest rates for the German economy, you're also setting it in the context of how the German system works. And in particular, the German housing system works in a different way to the UK housing system. Very few Germans actually own their own house. They tend to live in rented properties. This means that you can run with lower interest rates in the Eurozone, which suits the German engineering companies, but if you try to do it in this country, we would have had a far bigger housing bubble than we currently have. On average, rates would have been about 2% less in this country over the last 10 years, and you can imagine the effect that that would have had on house prices. So the control of one's monetary supply and one's interest rates is absolutely crucial, and it is important that it should be related to the UK economy, which has got different characteristics to the German economy and the French economy. And that is why I do think that going into a euro would be a very, very bad deal for this country. We should stay out and retain our independence.